The morning shift alarm echoed through the metallic corridors of Orbital Station New Seoul as thousands of workers began another day in the deep void of space. Outside the reinforced viewports, the twin suns of the Kepler system cast their orange glow across the station's rotating hull, while cargo ships from 12 different worlds docked at the outer rings like metal insects feeding on a chrome flower. Magistrate Park Jinwoo adjusted his black robes and settled into the worn leather chair that had seen 15 years of petty disputes, smuggling cases, and the endless bureaucratic machinery of colonial law. The courtroom stretched before him like a cramped theater, its walls lined with holographic displays showing legal codes in 4 languages: Korean, Standard Galactic, Altarian script, and the flowing symbols of the Vegan Trade Consortium. The 2 morning dockets scrolled across his personal screen. 37 cases today, ranging from unpaid docking fees to illegal modification of atmospheric recyclers. Park had developed a rhythm over the years, a mechanical precision that kept the wheels of justice turning smoothly in humanity's far-flung outposts. "Next case," he announced without emotion, his voice echoing through the courtroom's acoustics. "System." The bailiff, a stocky man named Cho Hyunwoo, gestured toward the defendant's platform. "Case number 4847, Dr. Kim Sora, charged with violation of quarantine protocols under Colonial Code Section 4.7. Dr. Kim Sora stepped forward, her footsteps clicking against the polished metal floor. At 32, she carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who spent more time with microscopes than people. Her dark skin immediately marked her as Earthborn, one of the relatively few non-Korean humans who had made their way to this corner of the galaxy. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across her face as she approached the defendant's podium. Around the courtroom, the usual crowd of spectators watched with varying degrees of interest. A group of Centauri traders whispered among themselves in their clicking language, their blue-tinged skin reflecting the artificial lighting. Near the back, a maintenance worker dozed in his orange jumpsuit, exhausted from a double shift keeping the station's life support systems running. 2 security officers flanked the main entrance, their plasma rifles powered down but visible as a reminder of order. Park glanced at his screen, scanning the charges with practiced efficiency. "Dr. Kim Sora, you stand accused of transporting biological materials through station checkpoints without proper quarantine clearance. How do you plead?" Sora's hands gripped the edges of the podium. "Your Honor, I can explain the circumstances. The question requires a simple answer," Park interrupted, his tone carrying the weight of routine authority. "Guilty or not guilty?" "Not guilty, Your Honor, but the situation is more complex than—" Park's stylus tapped against his desk with mechanical precision. The sound echoed through the courtroom like a countdown timer. "The evidence is clear, Dr. Kim. Station security recorded you bypassing 3 separate quarantine checkpoints with sealed containers. The molecular scanners detected biological samples that were not declared on your transport manifest." Sora's jaw tightened, frustration building in her eyes. "Your Honor, I'm a biomedical researcher working on critical projects for the Colonial Health Authority. Those samples were time-sensitive. Specimens from the Kepler 442b expedition. Every hour of delay could compromise months of research. The law does not recognize professional urgency as an exception to quarantine protocols," Park replied, his fingers dancing across the sentencing guidelines displayed on his screen. "These regulations exist to protect the 40,000 residents of this station from potential biological hazards." In the gallery, several spectators shifted uncomfortably. Everyone remembered the Proxima incident of 2387, when a single contaminated cargo container had killed 300 colonists before containment protocols could be activated. The fear of biological warfare had shaped colonial law for generations. "Your Honor," Sora pressed forward, her voice gaining strength. "The samples I transported were critical for developing new treatments for genetic disorders affecting outer colony populations. The research could save thousands of lives." Park's expression remained unchanged, carved from stone by years of legal precedent. "Dr. Kim, I'm certain your work serves important purposes. However, the law applies equally to all citizens, regardless of profession or noble intentions. Violation of Quarantine Protocols, Section 4.7, carries a standard fine of 50,000 credits. The amount hit the courtroom like a physical blow. 50,000 credits represented nearly 2 years' salary for most station workers. Several spectators winced, and one of the Centauri traders made a sympathetic clicking sound. Sora's face went pale. "Your Honor, that fine would destroy my research funding for the next 3 years. Everything I've worked toward." "The sentence stands," Park announced with finality. "Security will escort you to processing for payment arrangements. Next case." As Bailiff Cho moved toward the defendant's platform, Sora's personal communicator suddenly erupted with an urgent priority alert. The device's red warning light cast an ominous glow across her face as she glanced at the incoming message. Her expression shifted from frustration to horror in a matter of seconds. The message was brief but devastating. Emergency Protocol 7 activated. Zephyrian plague confirmed in outer colonies. Mortality rate exceeding 90%. All qualified. Xenobiologists report immediately. The blood drained from Sora's face as the full implications crashed over her like a wave. The samples she had risked everything to transport, the research that had just been dismissed as unimportant, might be humanity's only hope against an alien pathogen that was already spreading through the galaxy like wildfire. The first emergency signal pierced through New Sol Station's routine afternoon cycle like a scream in the darkness. Commander Yoon Daeho was reviewing cargo manifests in the main operations center when every communication array on the station suddenly lit up with incoming transmissions. The massive holographic display that normally showed peaceful trade routes transformed into a nightmare of red warning indicators spreading across the galaxy map like spilled blood. "Commander, we're receiving priority alerts from 17 different star systems," announced Communications Officer Kim Tae-hyun, his voice cracking with tension. "It's the same message everywhere. Some kind of plague has broken out in the outer colonies." The main screen flickered and resolved into the haggard face of Admiral Park Sung-jin, broadcasting from the Colonial Defense Fleet headquarters orbiting Earth. Dark circles rimmed his eyes, and his normally pristine uniform looked like he had been wearing it for days without sleep. "All stations, all colonies, all vessels in human space," the Admiral's voice echoed through the operations center. "We are facing an unprecedented biological crisis. An unknown pathogen of alien origin has been confirmed in the Zeta Reticuli, Wolf 359, and Gliese 6 and City 7C systems. Current mortality rate is exceeding 90% among both human and allied populations." The numbers hit the operations center like physical blows. 90% mortality meant entire worlds were dying. Commander Yoon felt his stomach drop as he calculated the implications. Millions of lives were hanging in the balance across dozens of star systems, the Admiral continued, his voice growing more desperate with each word. "The pathogen appears to target carbon-based neural networks. Humans, Altarians, vegans, and most Galactic Council species are equally vulnerable. Quarantine protocols have failed. The disease is spreading faster than our fastest ships." Through the station's massive observation windows, the crew could see emergency vessels beginning to arrive. Sleek medical frigates with red cross markings, docked alongside military destroyers bristling with defensive weapons. The usual peaceful commerce of the station was rapidly transforming into a war footing against an invisible enemy. Dr. Lee Min-ho, the station's chief medical officer, sprinted through the corridors toward Magistrate Park's chambers with a speed that surprised everyone who knew the normally calm physician. His white coat flapped behind him like wings as he dodged maintenance robots and startled colonists. The medical emergency klaxons were wailing throughout the station, their haunting sound mixing with the hum of life support systems working overtime. He burst through Park's office door without ceremony, his chest heaving from the desperate run. "Park, we have a crisis beyond anything we've ever faced. I need Dr. Kim Sora released immediately." Magistrate Park looked up from his afternoon case files, irritation flashing across his features. "Dr. Lee, please observe proper protocol. The woman was lawfully convicted this morning of quarantine violations. She's currently in processing for fine payment." "You don't understand," Lee gasped, still catching his breath. The Zephyrian plague has reached human space. 3 star systems are already infected. We need every qualified xenobiologist we can find, and Dr. Kim is one of only 12 in all of human space, qualified to handle this level of crisis. Park's frown deepened as he set down his stylus. The woman I find this morning, what makes her so special? There must be other researchers available. Lee pulled up a holographic display from his medical pad, showing Dr. Kim's research credentials, floating in the air between them. She developed the universal pathogen scanner system that first detected this plague. Her work on extremophile bacteria from hostile worlds has made her the leading expert on alien biological threats. And those samples she was transporting, the ones you ordered confiscated, they might be the only hope we have for developing a cure. The weight of realization began to settle on Park's shoulders like a crushing gravitational field. His confident demeanor started to crack as the implications became clear. Outside his office windows, he could see emergency medical teams setting up triage stations in the station's main concourse. Frightened families clustered around communication terminals, trying to contact loved ones in the affected systems. The samples contained antibodies from bacteria, found in the most extreme environments known to science. Lee continued, his voice urgent and pleading. Organisms that survive in conditions that would kill everything else. If there's a biological key to stopping this plague, it's probably in those specimens. A new alarm began sounding throughout the station, different from the medical emergency tone. This was the evacuation preparation signal, indicating that New Seoul might need to implement emergency protocols if the plague reached their system. Through the station's communication system, they could hear frantic reports from refugee ships arriving from the infected zones. Incoming medical transport from Wolf 359, announced the station's automated system. Casualties aboard, requesting immediate quarantine and treatment protocols. Park stood and walked to his office window, looking out at the organized chaos below. Medical personnel in full protective suits were wheeling patients into the emergency medical bay. The victims were barely recognizable as human, their bodies racked by the alien pathogen's effects. Some of the Altarian refugees showed the characteristic blue discoloration that indicated their species was just as vulnerable to the disease. "How long do we have?" Park asked quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. Lee checked his medical pad, scanning the latest reports from the fleet. Based on current spread patterns, the plague could reach our system within 72 hours, maybe less if it's being carried by faster vessels fleeing the infected zones. The bureaucratic pride that had driven Park's career for 15 years suddenly felt petty and meaningless in the face of galactic extinction. Every regulation he had enforced, every fine he had imposed, every case he had decided seemed trivial compared to the weight of human survival pressing down on him. The station's main laboratory had been transformed overnight into something resembling a war room against an invisible enemy. What was once a modest research facility now buzzed with activity as technicians wheeled in quantum microscopes, molecular analyzers, and containment units that hummed with protective energy fields. The air recycling systems worked overtime, creating a constant background whisper as they filtered and refiltered every molecule that entered the sealed environment. Dr. Kim Sora stood at the center of it all, her hands steady despite the weight of an entire galaxy's survival resting on her shoulders. The confiscated samples from her research expedition sat in specialized containment units, their metallic surfaces gleaming under the harsh laboratory lighting. After 18 hours of bureaucratic delays, her life's work had finally been returned to her, though perhaps too late to make a difference. Around the laboratory's observation deck, an unprecedented gathering of officials watched her every move through reinforced, transparent aluminum windows. Ambassador Yun Hana represented the Galactic Council, her elegant diplomatic robes a stark contrast to the utilitarian environment. Beside her stood General Cho Min-sik from the Colonial Defense Force, his weathered face showing the strain of coordinating defensive efforts across multiple star systems. Representatives from the Altarian Embassy, their blue-tinged skin reflecting the laboratory's sterile lighting, whispered among themselves in their musical language. The quantum microscope before Sora displayed a three-dimensional holographic image of the plague pathogen, magnified millions of times until it resembled a twisted mechanical spider made of organic compounds. Its structure defied everything she knew about natural biological evolution. The pathogen's surface bristled with specialized proteins that seemed designed for one specific purpose: infiltrating and destroying neural tissue in carbon-based life forms. "The molecular structure is too perfect," Sora murmured, her fingers dancing across the control interface as she rotated the holographic display. "Natural pathogens evolve through random mutations over millions of years. This thing looks like it was designed by an engineer." She enhanced different sections of the pathogen, highlighting specific protein chains that glowed in different colors. The watching officials leaned forward, though most of them couldn't understand the complex biochemistry unfolding before their eyes. What they could understand was the gravity in Sora's voice as she continued her analysis. "Look at these receptor sites," she said, pointing to areas on the pathogen that glowed red in the holographic display. "They're specifically designed to bind with neurotransmitters found in human, Altarian, and vegan nervous systems. But not just any neurotransmitters, the exact combination that we use for higher cognitive functions." The implications sent a chill through the observation room. This wasn't just a disease. It was a weapon aimed at the most intelligent species in the galaxy. Ambassador Yoon Hana stepped closer to the reinforced window, her diplomatic composure cracking slightly. "Dr. Kim, are you saying this pathogen was deliberately created?" Sora nodded grimly, her dark eyes reflecting the holographic display's shifting lights. "Without question, the Zephyrian pathogen isn't natural, it's engineered. Designed specifically to target carbon-based neural networks, which means it can kill humans, Altarians, and most Galactic Council species while leaving silicon-based life forms completely unaffected." The laboratory fell silent except for the constant hum of machinery and air recyclers. Outside the station's massive windows, they could see medical ships from a dozen different worlds arriving in a steady stream, their hulls scarred from emergency hyperspace jumps. Some carried refugees from the infected systems, while others brought research equipment and medical supplies for the desperate fight against the plague. General Cho's comm unit crackled with an incoming message from the front lines. "General, this is Captain Lee aboard the medical frigate Mercy's Hope. We've just received survivors from the Vegan colony on Epsilon Eridani. The plague hit their world 72 hours ago. Out of 8 million inhabitants, fewer than 3,000 are still alive. The numbers hit the room like a physical blow. 8 million people reduced to 3,000 in less than 3 days. The pathogen's efficiency was beyond anything they had imagined." "Dr. Kim," Ambassador Yoon said, her voice barely steady, "you're telling us this is biological warfare?" Sora manipulated the holographic controls, bringing up a comparison display showing the pathogen alongside normal viral structures. "Not just biological warfare. This is genocide on a galactic scale. Whoever created this understands our biology better than we understand theirs. The pathogen's design suggests knowledge of neural pathways that we're only beginning to map ourselves." She paused, studying the data streams flowing across multiple screens around the laboratory. "But there's something else, something that gives me hope." The room held its collective breath as Sora activated another containment unit. This one held the samples she had been transporting when she was arrested, specimens that had traveled across the galaxy from the harsh world of Kepler 442b. The holographic display shifted to show microscopic organisms that looked like tiny, crystalline structures, their surfaces reflecting light in rainbow patterns. "These are extremophile bacteria from one of the most hostile environments known to science," Sora explained, her voice gaining strength as she spoke. "They survive in temperatures that would melt steel, in radiation that would kill us instantly, in chemical environments that would dissolve our bones. They represent 4 billion years of evolution's most successful survival strategies." She began running comparative analyses, watching as the data streams showed the interaction between the plague pathogen and the extremophile bacteria. The results made her eyes widen with something that looked like cautious hope. "The bacteria produce antibodies that I believe can neutralize the pathogen," she announced, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Their defense mechanisms are so advanced that they can adapt to threats in real time. If we can synthesize these antibodies and modify them for use in carbon-based life forms. From the observation deck, Magistrate Park Jin-woo watched in growing horror as he realized the full weight of his morning's decision. His routine enforcement of quarantine protocols had nearly prevented the one person who might save the galaxy from getting access to her life-saving research. The fine he had imposed with such bureaucratic certainty could have doomed billions of lives across dozens of worlds. The research samples that had seemed so unimportant a few hours ago now represented the last hope for entire civilizations. Park's hands trembled as he gripped the observation deck's railing, understanding that his snap judgment had almost sealed humanity's fate. The laboratory had become a battlefield against time itself. For 36 hours straight, Dr. Kim Sora had worked without sleep, her hands moving with practiced precision as she synthesized the most important cure in galactic history. The extremophile bacteria from Kepler 442b had yielded their secrets slowly, requiring delicate extraction processes that couldn't be rushed without destroying the vital antibodies within. Around her, a team of robotic assistants moved with mechanical efficiency, their chrome arms handling dangerous compounds, while she focused on the complex biochemical equations that could save billions of lives. The lab's atmosphere recyclers worked overtime, constantly filtering the air as she combined alien bacteria with human medical technology in ways that had never been attempted before. "Dr. Kim, your vitals are showing extreme fatigue," announced the medical monitoring system in its calm, synthetic voice. "Recommend immediate rest period." "Not yet," Sora muttered, her eyes bloodshot but determined as she watched the final synthesis reactions taking place in the quantum biochamber. The mixture glowed with a soft blue light as the extremophile antibodies bonded with human-compatible proteins, creating something entirely new in the galaxy's medical history. The station's medical bay had been transformed into ground zero for humanity's most desperate gamble. Emergency medical teams had converted 3 entire decks into treatment facilities, with patients arriving hourly from the infected systems aboard refugee ships. The walls were lined with biomonitors, showing the vital signs of dozens of plague victims, their readings painting a grim picture of the pathogen's devastating effects. When the first batch of cure was ready, volunteers lined up, despite knowing they were risking their lives on an untested treatment. At the front of the line stood Commander Kang Ji-won, an Altarian trade liaison, whose blue skin had turned an alarming shade of purple as the plague attacked his nervous system. His breathing was labored, and his eyes showed the clouded look of someone fighting a losing battle against the alien pathogen. "I volunteer to be first," he whispered through the translator device attached to his throat. "My people are dying across 12 worlds. If this cure works, it could save millions of my species." Dr. Sora prepared the injection herself, her hands steady despite the enormous pressure. The cure looked innocuous enough in the medical injector, just a clear fluid that represented months of research and the hopes of entire civilizations. Behind her, medical teams monitored every piece of equipment, ready to intervene if the experimental treatment caused unexpected complications. "Commander Kang, this is completely experimental," Sora warned as she approached his medical bed. "We don't know all the possible side effects. The antibodies are based on bacteria that evolved in one of the harshest environments in the galaxy." The Altarian commander managed a weak smile. "Doctor, I'm already dying. My nervous system is shutting down hour by hour. Even if your cure doesn't work, I'll die knowing someone tried." The injection took only seconds, but the waiting felt like hours. Medical scanners focused on the commander's neural pathways, tracking the cure as it spread through his bloodstream. The biomonitors showed his brain activity spiking as the extremophile antibodies encountered the plague pathogen for the first time. Within minutes, something extraordinary began to happen. The purple discoloration in Commander Kang's skin started to fade, returning to its normal blue hue. His breathing became stronger and more regular. The clouded look in his eyes cleared as his nervous system began to recover from the pathogen's attack. "It's working," whispered Dr. Lee Minho, the station's chief medical officer, as he watched the readings on his medical scanner. "The antibodies are neutralizing the pathogen faster than we hoped. The second volunteer was Kim Jiho, a human cargo trader whose body showed the plague's devastating effects. Purple lesions covered his skin, and his movements were jerky and uncontrolled as the pathogen attacked his motor functions. The man could barely speak, but his eyes showed fierce determination as Sora prepared the second injection. Within an hour of receiving the cure, the trader's lesions began to fade. His movements became smoother and more coordinated as his nervous system repaired itself. The medical bay erupted in quiet celebration as it became clear that the cure worked on both human and alien physiology. But Dr. Sora wasn't ready to celebrate yet. She stood before the emergency council that had assembled in the station's main conference room, her white lab coat stained with chemicals and exhaustion written across her face. Representatives from dozens of worlds watched her through holographic displays, their faces showing mixtures of hope and desperation. "The cure works," she announced, her voice carrying through the communication systems to every corner of human space. "But we have a new problem. We need industrial-scale production immediately. Every major manufacturing center in human space needs these specifications within hours, not days." Admiral Park Seungjin appeared on the main display, broadcasting from Earth's orbital shipyards. "Dr. Kim, what kind of production capacity are we talking about? How many doses do we need?" Sora pulled up holographic charts showing infection rates across the affected systems. "Based on current spread patterns, we need at least 50 million doses within the next week. That means converting pharmaceutical plants, food processors, even atmospheric recyclers if necessary. Anything that can handle complex molecular synthesis." The scale of the challenge hit the Council like a physical blow. 50 million doses represented the largest medical manufacturing effort in human history, and they had to achieve it while the plague continued spreading through the galaxy. Magistrate Park Jinwoo stepped forward from the back of the room, his judicial robes replaced by simple civilian clothes. The authority he had wielded so confidently that morning seemed small and petty compared to the enormity of the crisis they faced. "Dr. Kim," he said quietly, his voice heavy with regret, "I owe you an apology. My prejudice this morning nearly prevented you from saving billions of lives." Sora looked up from the data transmission console where she was preparing to broadcast the cure specifications to every manufacturing facility in human space. Her fingers continued flying over the controls as she spoke, every second crucial in the race against the spreading plague. "Save the apologies for later," she said, her tone sharp but not unkind. "Right now, I need every legal obstacle removed from the manufacturing process. Can you ensure this cure gets distributed without bureaucratic delays that could cost lives?" Park nodded solemnly, understanding that his moment of redemption had arrived. "Consider it done. I'll personally override every regulation, every permit requirement, every bureaucratic hurdle that could slow down production." 3 months had passed since the galaxy's darkest hour. A new Sol station had transformed from a desperate medical battleground into a symbol of hope across the known universe. The orbital facility now served as the central hub for the largest humanitarian effort in galactic history, with massive cargo ships arriving daily to distribute the life-saving cure to the farthest reaches of civilized space. The main docking bays hummed with constant activity as vessels from hundreds of worlds queued up to receive their allotments of the synthesized cure. Sleek Altarian medical frigates with their distinctive blue hulls worked alongside bulky human cargo haulers, and the elegant crystalline ships of the vegan consortium. Robotic loading crews moved with mechanical precision, transferring millions of doses to ships that would carry them to colonies, space stations, and frontier worlds throughout the galaxy. Dr. Kim Sora stood at the observation deck overlooking the bustling docks, watching as another shipment of cure departed for the Outer Rim territories. The exhaustion from those desperate early days had faded, replaced by a quiet satisfaction as reports continued to arrive from across the galaxy. The Zephyrian plague had been contained, its spread halted by the coordinated efforts of dozens of species working together toward a common goal. The final statistics were staggering in their scope. An estimated 4.7 billion lives had been saved across human and allied space, representing the largest rescue operation in recorded history. Entire worlds that had been written off as lost had been brought back from the brink of extinction. The Altarian colonies in the Vega system, the human settlements around Wolf 359, and the mixed species trading posts throughout the Outer Rim had all been saved by the cure derived from extremophile bacteria found on a hostile world at the edge of known space. Today, representatives from across the galaxy had gathered on New Sol Station for an unprecedented ceremony. The main assembly hall had been decorated with the banners and symbols of 23 different species, creating a colorful tapestry that represented the diversity of galactic civilization. Diplomatic vessels from the core worlds had brought high-ranking officials who rarely ventured into the frontier territories, drawn by the significance of the moment. Ambassador Yoon Hana took the stage first, her elegant robes flowing as she moved to the podium. Behind her, a massive holographic display showed the cure's distribution across the galaxy, with green indicators marking worlds that had been successfully treated and returned to health. "Citizens of the galaxy," she began, her voice carrying through translation devices that rendered her words in dozens of languages simultaneously. "We gather today to honor someone whose work represents the highest ideals of scientific cooperation and humanitarian service." The audience was unlike anything ever assembled in this corner of space. Altarian dignitaries sat beside human colonists, their blue skin contrasting with the varied tones of humanity's far-flung descendants. Representatives from the silicon-based crystalline collective, immune to the plague but instrumental in coordinating relief efforts, reflected the stage lights in rainbow patterns across their translucent forms. Even the mysterious watchers from the galactic core had sent an observer, their floating spherical form hovering silently in the back of the hall. The Galactic Council has voted unanimously to award Dr. Kim Sora the Cross of Universal Service, Ambassador Yoon announced, holding up a crystalline medal that seemed to contain captured starlight within its structure. "She becomes the first human to receive our highest civilian honor, and only the 12th being in galactic history to be so recognized." As Sora approached the stage, the audience rose in a gesture of respect that transcended species boundaries. The human colonists applauded in their traditional manner, while the Altarians produced harmonious tones that filled the hall with music. The Vegan representatives created intricate light patterns with their bioluminescent skin, and even the normally reserved crystalline collective pulsed with approving colors. The ceremony continued with presentations from various governments and organizations that had been saved by the cure. The governor of New Angeles presented Sora with a medal made from metal, taken from the first human colony ship, while the Altarian Council gifted her with a rare harmonic crystal that would sing with the voices of their saved worlds whenever she held it. But perhaps the most meaningful moment came when Magistrate Park Jinwoo stepped forward to present a special commendation from the colonial government. The man who had once represented rigid bureaucracy now stood as a symbol of personal growth and redemption. His judicial robes had been replaced with simple ceremonial dress, and his demeanor showed the humility that had come from nearly causing a galactic catastrophe through his prejudiced judgment. "Dr. Kim," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the hall's acoustic system, "your dedication to science and your perseverance in the face of institutional failure exemplify the best of humanity. Your work reminds us that true justice isn't found in rigid adherence to rules, but in recognizing when those rules must bend to serve the greater good." He paused, looking directly at Sora with eyes that held 3 months of reflection and regret. "You faced discrimination and bureaucratic obstacles, yet never abandoned your mission to save lives. You turned personal injustice into galactic salvation, and for that, all of civilized space owes you a debt that can never be repaid." Sora accepted the commendation graciously, but her response surprised everyone in the hall. Instead of accepting praise for her individual achievement, she turned to address the diverse crowd that represented the best of galactic civilization. "The real victory isn't that humans developed this cure," she said, her voice gaining strength as she spoke. "It's that we worked together, across species and cultures, to save lives. Altarian medical ships carried the cure to human colonies. Vegan manufacturing facilities produced doses for crystalline settlements. The silicon-based collective provided computational power for our research, even though they were never at risk from the plague. She gestured to the mixed crowd before her, each species represented in the audience that had gathered to celebrate their collective survival. This is what makes us strong in this galaxy, not our individual technologies or military might, but our refusal to give up on each other, no matter the odds. The hall erupted in the greatest celebration New Sol Station had ever witnessed. Species that had been strangers before the crisis now stood together as allies, united by their shared experience of facing extinction and choosing cooperation over competition. Ambassador Yoon Hana smiled from her seat in the front row, remembering the desperate early days when the galaxy's survival had hung by a thread. Humanity had once again proven that their greatest strength wasn't their advanced technology or their military prowess, but their stubborn refusal to abandon hope even in the darkest circumstances. Outside the station's massive windows, the stars shone with renewed promise. The galaxy was safe, its billions of inhabitants free to pursue their dreams and build their futures. The Zephyrian plague had tested the bonds between species and found them stronger than anyone had dared to hope. The end